My mom had always told me there were parts of our home that I was never allowed to go. She claimed it was for my own safety, but now that she's gone, I'm free to explore the entire house, even the places that my mom warned me about. But what I found was something that made me question everything. Dad called me over to look at some old photo albums. "Look at this one," he said, pointing to a picture of me and my friends. Another was upstairs in what used to be my younger sister's room. I felt like I was doing something wrong by going against my mom's wishes. But then I thought to myself, it's just an old house. The basement was full of boxes, furniture, decorations, and all sorts of other random items that had been in the house for years. I don't know if it was because I hadn't been in here since she moved out a couple years ago, or if it was because my mom had specifically forbidden me from entering. I mean, they're just creepy. I stepped back and almost tripped over something on the floor. It was a wooden box wrapped in duct tape and covered in cobwebs. As I climbed the ladder, I could feel my anxiety starting to rise again. But now that I was older and wiser, I was curious about what lay behind the mysterious opening. I walked closer and peered inside, but it was too dark to see anything. That's when I heard footsteps, heavy footsteps coming closer. I pulled back and stared at the wall in disbelief. Was someone else in the attic with me? The footsteps started again, and this time they were coming towards the wall that I was leaning against. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in fear. But eventually the footsteps stopped again, and I heard my sister's voice asking, "Are you sure you're okay? Because I can hear your heartbeat." I started to panic, but then I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I pushed off the wall and ran as fast as I could away from the attic. "Hey, can you come to the house?" "Right now," I said, my voice shaking. "Okay, what's wrong?" "Did something happen?" he asked. I don't know," I replied, my eyes wide with terror. "I think there's someone in the house with us." Before he could respond, I hung up the phone and rolled down the window. I needed to get away from there. I didn't dare look back to see if my sister was following me or not, but I could feel her presence behind me like a dark cloud. He said it was just my imagination, but I knew it wasn't. I could still hear my sister's footsteps in the attic above me, and I could still feel her presence lurking in the shadows. I haven't been back to that house since, and I don't ever plan on going back. I kept running until I got to my dad's truck. I jumped in without thinking and slammed the door shut. There's no way anyone could be in there, I told myself. Maybe it's just an animal or something. So I did what anyone else would do. I reached out and touched the wall next to the dark spot. Then I pressed my shoulder against it and pushed. I waited, but there was no sound except for the beating of my own heart. Then I heard a voice. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I froze. Who was it? I wanted to run, but my feet felt like they were made of lead. All I could do was stand there and listen as the voice continued speaking. "Mom, Dad, is that you? I've been looking everywhere for you." Just like my mom had done so many years ago, I pushed those thoughts aside and told myself to calm down. When I got to the top, I noticed a dark spot in the corner. It looked like a doorway, but it wasn't. There was no door, just a gaping black hole in the wall. I don't know what compelled me to open it, but as soon as I lifted the lid, I regretted it. Inside was a collection of knives, some big, some small, along with a couple of meat cleavers. I thought to myself, it's probably just a false wall or something. Like my mom used to say, just leave me alone. I was about to walk away when I heard a noise coming from behind the wall. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but then I heard it again. Whatever was on the other side was moving around. I quickly slammed the box shut and ran out of the room. I could still feel my heart pounding in my chest. Either way, I began to feel uneasy. Her room was small and had a closet in the corner. But instead of hanging clothes, my sister had filled it with all sorts of creepy dolls. Some of them were porcelain and looked like they came straight out of a horror movie. Others were Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls, with blank eyes staring straight ahead. Most of it was covered in dust and cobwebs. I looked around and realized that none of it belonged to me or my dad. It was all my mom's stuff that she had collected from who knows where. There was nothing particularly interesting down there, just a bunch of junk. What could be so bad about looking in the basement, the attic, or my sister's old room? And the last one was in the attic. None of these places made any sense to me. Why would she have put restrictions on me? Was she hiding something? What was she trying to keep me from seeing? Besides, it wasn't like any of us were staying in the house. We were just going through my mom's things and clearing it out so we could sell it and move on. Oh, what grade was that? 6th? 7th? Woody shook his head. I can't believe how fast you all grew up. I forced a smile. I knew he just wanted to talk about my mom, since he was struggling with her passing too. But every time he tried to bring up fond memories of her, I felt more pain in my chest. And I couldn't bear to look at any pictures of her either. It all started when I was helping my dad clear out my mom's things after she passed away. One day while I was walking through the house, I noticed a few closed doors. As a kid, I remembered being told by my mom not to go anywhere near them. They were off limits. And although I never questioned her reasoning before, I was curious as to why she didn't want me going near them. It was a tremendously difficult time for me, because I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. My whole life growing up, my mom had always been there for me, no matter what. So when she died suddenly from an aneurysm, I fell into a deep depression. I couldn't do anything or think of anything other than the fact that I'd never get to see her again. Because I was so distraught, I didn't really pay much attention to what was going on around me. As days turned into weeks, though, I slowly began to come out of my shell. One of the doors was located in the basement, and I remember thinking how strange it was that she would unallow me to open it, even though my mom wasn't around anymore and she could unstop me from going into those areas. I hesitated. So I went to each room and opened each door. But when I went to my sister's old room, that's when I got scared. As I stood there looking at them, I thought to myself, how could anyone find these things interesting? I wanted to tell my dad about what I'd found, but I knew he'd only worry, and I didn't want to burden him with that. So I went to the attic to try and get my mind off what I'd seen. When I asked my mom about it once, she'd simply told me to stay away from it and that it was nothing. The wall didn't budge. I put my hands on my hips and huffed. This is ridiculous. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I put my ear against the cold wood and listened intently. But as I stood there listening, the footsteps got louder and louder until suddenly they stopped right on the other side of the wall. I knew that voice. It was my sister's. I immediately began to scream for help, but no one came. That was when I knew I had to do something. I do not know how long I sat there before I finally calmed down enough to call my dad. When I got home later that evening, I tried to explain to my dad what happened, but he didn't believe me.